normally what I
Now.
forget. Thanks, Kate.
Thank you.
Yeah, so just big welcome to everyone and echoing Kate's words. I appreciate you making the time. And yeah, so I'm here with you for around an hour. And basically, the arc of our journey this evening, I'll just give I'll start as ever with an acknowledgement of country, and then I'm going to lead us into an attunement, which helps us, yeah, connect to the body and drop in a little bit, which feels really appropriate for yeah, somatic ecotherapy training, a training that involves the body, includes the body actively. And then we'll flow from there into the nuts and bolts of the course, something of the frameworks, the feeling tone of the course, and some of the logistics, so how it's kind of tied together. Um, and then at the end, we'll also have time for questions. So that's the flow. Um, yeah, and so without further ado, I want to start at the beginning. And I want to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land that I'm on here in the Blue Mountains. And I'm on the land of the Darug and Gundungura people. And you might sense as you're listening here to the land that you're on there. And you might also silently name the custodians of that country, just to really bring them into this circle here this evening around this fire. And I want to pay my respects to the elders of these lineages and to the way that they have tended and loved country for millennia, for more than 60,000 years. And also to the lineage of deep listening that First Nations globally have stewarded into the world. And this lineage of listening to self, listening to each other, and also listening to the earth and the land. And so, in a program, in a training such as this, we're also engaging in that kind of deep listening. We're learning how to, or remembering how to engage in that kind of listening. So, I want to welcome each of you here tonight. And we might flow from that place into an attunement. And so, just going to invite each of you to get comfy. Welcome, Julie. Um, and maybe grabbing a pillow or a cushion or just checking the body right now to see if it needs anything to be more comfortable. And I'm going to grab a cushion. We're just grabbing whatever it is that will make you feel more at home right now. We're all emerging from a long day, perhaps, and just going to invite each of you to sense your sit bones on the chair you're on. And if you want, you can have your eyes closed. You can turn your cameras off. And we're going to be a bit inward here. So just sensing your sit bones on the chair, sensing the contact there. And maybe also sensing your feet on the earth, connected to the ground. And you might invite the support from the earth to flow up through your feet, into your legs, into your body. Supported by gravity, yeah, and supported by the land here. And just pausing with that invitation, just noticing how it feels in the body, maybe, to invite that support from the land that you're on. Kate, I'm just wondering if you're there, if we can mute everyone. Yeah, thanks. And then you might bring awareness to your breath. Just noticing how that moves through your body right now without needing to change it. Maybe noticing the rise of chest and belly on the in-breath and the falling of chest and belly on the out-breath. And maybe there's a sense of being supported by the breath here too, carried in the tide of the breath. And maybe sensing here if there's anything that might be in the way of really landing this evening, of really arriving here with us. A thought or a feeling or many thoughts. And just seeing how it would be to say hello to that. Just to let it know you're aware of it, without it needing to go anywhere. Just including it in the space here. And noticing how it feels to say hello in that way. A gentle hello. And if the body is tight or there's areas of tightness, you might gently invite them to soften here, if they want to. Just a gentle invitation taken into each place that's tight or contracted. Noticing also my body's moving here and inviting you to let your body move you this evening. If there's a movement already happening or perhaps a postural readjustment at any time, or feel free to stand, lie down. Just listening to the body as I speak with you this evening. And then I'm going to invite you to bring your awareness inside the body, into the well of the body. Maybe just noticing the sensations and any feelings and emotions that are arising in the body right now. And just gently acknowledging anything you find. Again, without needing to change it. Noticing how it feels to do that. And you might be aware of the spaciousness that's here as well, if there is spaciousness, space around the thoughts or feelings, sensations in the body. A sense of space of the body. I'm going to invite you now to sense what it is that brought you here this evening to this talk on somatic ecotherapy. What thread did you follow here? Maybe there's an intention that drew you here, or a question, or perhaps a longing. Maybe there's a feeling that doesn't quite have a name yet, that's there in the body, and you followed that here. So So whatever it is, just taking a moment to acknowledge it. This thread that you followed tonight. And maybe it's a thread that goes farther back maybe years, that brings you to this point. And one of the things I'm going to talk about, and I talk about in the course, is the way that our consciousness interpenetrates the consciousness of the collective, so the collective unconscious, but also deeper than that, the consciousness of the earth, and beyond that, cosmic consciousness. So consciousness is porous and interpenetrates. And so maybe the intention or the feeling or the strand that you followed here this evening comes from a deeper place, comes out of the ground of the earth. And perhaps the longing or grief of the more than human world. So just taking a moment to sit with that possibility, that we're each gathered here following threads born of the earth, born of a deeper sentience. And there may be a gesture or word or symbol that represents the intention or the thread that you followed this evening. So just taking a moment to sense if there is one, just to represent this. What is it that brought you here? Perhaps a hand gesture. And just trusting what comes, and you might like to offer that now, just to really embody it. To offer that gesture consciously as a way of saying to the earth and the more than human world that, yes, I hear you. And I'm here consciously carrying this fruit, this intention. Offering that intention back as an act of reciprocity to the land. And just noticing how it feels to do that. To connect to the earth in that way. Knowing the earth has spoken through you. And then we're going to make our slow way back in a moment. But before we come back, just checking if there's anything else that wants to be known. Before we come back. And if there's anything that feels incomplete here, you might say to it that you're willing to return to it again when it needs you. And then carrying your intentions with you. I'm going to invite each of you to return slowly. First, sensing your sit bones on the chair, your feet on the earth. Sensing the support there. And perhaps bringing awareness to breath again and its tidal movement. And then in your own time, I'll invite you to open your eyes and just slowly coming back into the space that you're in, maybe scanning the room with your eyes. We get to come back slowly. I'm going to invite you to turn your cameras on when you're back, if you can. And if you'd rather keep them off, then that's welcome. So welcome back if you're back. And if you're still arriving, take your time. So welcome each of you, bearing the fruit of the earth and the intentions that led you here, and some of the questions. And I just wanted to, before I go into the nuts and bolts of the course, I just wanted to name the elephant in the room, that we are here in this age of climate catastrophe and environmental collapse and the extinction of species. And we're here for an ecotherapy talk. And so I just wanted to honor and to name that the intentions you're bearing are significant, that you're called here in this time to this kind of work. And so I also wanted to dedicate this evening and the fruit of this evening to the healing and holing of people and place. And that this kind of gathering tonight intentionally might benefit the more than human world in some way. And maybe I should also talk about why I'm here and why Metavision asked me to create this program some years ago now. And yeah, it's there's many ways to answer that, but the consensus reality answer is that I'm a PACFA certified somatic therapist, and I'm a meditation teacher, and I'm also certified as a nature and forest therapy guide with ANFT in the States. And I've done a lot of time wandering the land, psychospiritually lost. And I've done a lot of programs and training with Animas Valley Institute, Soulcraft, and Wild Mind Work. And I've done a lot of time training and focusing, so inner relationship focusing, which is that wonderful practice of coming into the body, into relationship with the body's way of knowing and the felt sense. But maybe the most important reason I'm here is because of my own trauma and my family of origin history. So I came from a war-torn household that shaped in me significant patterns of feeling lost and severed from place and people and culture. And what took root in me was this really deep sense of not belonging, least of all to the earth. And so I felt hugely discombobulated in mind and body and spirit, and also ecologically. And then that shaped patterns of addiction and anxiety and depression and various toxic deficiency stories. But at some point, mystery called me to turn inwards and to follow the line into the body and to look at the stories prior to the stories of who I was. And so I embarked on a radical inner pilgrimage, essentially, and gathered about me elders, human and more than human, Jungian writing, plant teachers, and in time really encountered the inner teacher, which is the greatest teacher of all. And through the doorway of my own traumas and my wounds, in relationship with the natural world, discovered the way back home. So to a deep sense of belonging again. And that feels really radical to say, because as an Englishman born to a Canadian mother and a German father who fled thousands of kilometers to Australia, I felt hard pressed to find any semblance of belonging. So what we're gathering here around tonight is also the seeds of the threads that really help me to heal. And so this is the weaving that I'm offering here, drawn with deep reverence from all the lineages and teachers that I've had. So I might flow into the nitty gritty. I'm just going to share my screen. Can I have a thumbs up? Can people see the presentation? Yeah, okay, thanks. Okay. So, Somatic Ecotherapy Guide Training. So the arc of this presentation is, what is Somatic Ecotherapy? And I imagine you have an idea, otherwise you wouldn't be here. Then I'm going to get into the core training framework, and then I'll talk about some of the logistics, and we've got questions. But firstly, yeah, what is this thing called Somatic Ecotherapy? And unsurprisingly, it combines ecotherapy with somatic work, which are two of the most profoundly powerful healing and holding paradigms that I know of. And each of which is woven or constellated around many different lineages and practices. And so we're drawing on deep reservoirs here in this training. So if we look first at ecotherapy, itself flows actually from ecopsychology, which was forged in the 1980s. And one of the godfathers is Theodore Roszak, and this is an incredible book. But ecopsychology held as its central tenet that human well-being and wholeness is inseparable and inextricably linked to the well-being of the planet, of the earth. And so he curated a whole series of thought leaders, including James Hillman, to write about this emerging paradigm and this emerging realization in psychology, that psychology isn't just an intrapersonal phenomenon. It involves the relationship with the planet and the well-being of the planet. And so ecotherapy flows from that directly. And ecotherapy is concerned with gathering a series of invitations that take people out onto the land, into relationship with the more than human world, with the flesh of the earth. And that relationship is innately healing, because as human beings, we evolved over hundreds of thousands of years on the land, in relationship with place and the more than human world. And so we are programmed to survive and to flourish in relationship with country. So this is the remit of ecotherapy, is to get people back out there into practices that help them remember how to connect to place in a way that's healing and that can cultivate wholeness of mind and body and soul. So that's ecotherapy. And why somatic? Because there's various expressions of ecotherapy that don't include that term. And for me, it was a really critical inclusion, because many of the programs variously that I embarked on didn't necessarily actively include the body. And that for me was a problem. And it felt like something was deeply missing. And one of the first reasons is that we tend to live in a disembodied world. And for most of my life, I lived from the neck up. I completely disavowed my body and all the parts and traumas and frozen energies within it. And so somatic ecotherapy is really concerned with re-including the body and helping people to re-inhabit that place, the places within the body, including all of the parts that inhabit the body, the inner parts, which is the second piece. So rather than disavowing or ignoring parts we might not want to look at, somatic ecotherapy embraces all of you, and in fact knows that all of the parts we hold, and some of the ones that maybe we don't understand or that scare us or we don't often come into relationship with, that those parts are a doorway into deeper healing. that the healing lies through the doorway of relationship to those parts. The other aspect of somatic ecotherapy is that when ecotherapy is embodied, we can walk our healing onto the land and into our lives. So that kind of healing that includes the body tends to be cellular. It goes deeper because the frozen energies that shape and constellate our patterns of suffering, of despair, of loneliness, slowly thaw out in the light of awareness. So it's a more holistic, embodied kind of ecotherapy. And the other critical reason is that when we include the body, we are accessing different ways of knowing. And this is a really important point for healing and the work of reconnecting to the earth. So if some of you may know of Stephen Gallagher, and he was really instrumental in shaping Bill Plotkin's work and his wild mind model. And Stephen Gallagher, in his book, Animals of the Four Windows of Knowing, talks about 4 different ways we know ourselves and the world. And thinking is the one that we primarily engage. And we often confuse thinking with knowing. But he writes that there's 3 other windows of knowing that have essentially atrophied in certainly Western culture. And he writes that if we don't 3-dimensionalize how we know ourselves and the earth, then we're not going to survive as a species. It's that important to cultivate these other windows of knowing, which 3-dimensionalize our capacity to know ourselves and come into deeper relationship with the earth. And so when we include the body in somatic ecotherapy, we're actively including these other 3, the sensing way of knowing through the 5 senses, smelling, tasting, seeing the earth, seeing them more than human beings in our context. We're also engaging the felt sense in the body, which is the body's way of knowing complex situations. And the felt sense itself is a doorway into healing, but also into embodied conversation with the land. And then deep imagery, which is this profound creative symbolism that emerges unbidden from dreams and daydreams, and itself is a doorway into deeper conversation. So this is the remit of somatic ecotherapy, is to include and 3-dimensionalize how we know and the vehicles of insight that are powerful tools for healing. So that's why it's somatic. So somatic ecotherapy really offers a holistic approach to coming back into relationship with the earth and the land, and also to the inner wildness, the inner wild ones, the ones that we may have forgotten, our inner kind of innocence, our inner wild, indigenous one, inner dark muse beloved, speaking about the inner archetypes of wholeness. So we're including all of these, and they reside in the body, and they reside in the deep imagery. And that's the quote from Stephen Gallagher. The life of humanity itself depending on the ability to 3-dimensionalize how we know. So this is urgent work for urgent times. And as Bayo Akomolafe beautifully says, these are urgent times, let us slow down. And that's part of the work of embodiment, is through slowness and through slow sensory embodiment on the land, we can work through the polycrisis. So there's lots of different lineages and teachers that have informed this work, and I'm not going to go through them all here, but this is a snapshot of some really beautiful lineages in their own right. And, you know, from forest bathing, the ANFT model that I'm trained in with Amos Clifford, lots of wild mind thinking and archetypal, wild archetypes really shape some of our work here. Process work, I'm a process-oriented therapist, so that comes in Arnie Mindell's wonderful signal tracking on the land. So there's lots of different lineages here that we'll be drawing on. So let's talk about the framework itself. And really the heart of this journey, if you join, is centered around this framework called the 5 terrains framework. And this is essentially what it looks like. And this is a framework you'll get to know really well. And it represents a treasure trove for you as guides, if you're wanting to guide people on the land, or if you're wanting to guide yourself on the land. This is a really powerful process that you can engage in a framework. So the 5 terrains framework is, in the first instance, it's a cohesive map of a really wild ecotherapy landscape. There's lots of different ecotherapies out there. And so this framework really helps to organize and make sense of how all of these disparate pieces fit together in a really cogent way. Another thing that this does, if you're looking to guide, others or yourself, is that it forms a really powerful, simple sequence that you can follow to create nature-based invitations or programs, be it a 30-minute, forest bathing session on the land, through to a multi-day kind of nature-based healing intensive. So it's a really beautiful structure that orients you on the land with a series of tools, which is the next point. Each of the terrains contains different tools that achieve different things. So it's a really it's a treasure trove of different tools that you can take out to guide others or yourself on the land. The other thing that this does, the linear sequencing, is really deliberate. And and I'll come on to a more detail in a second, but this framework really meets you wherever you are in your own personal healing journey, or wherever you're at whenever you find yourself on the land. Maybe you've had a really busy day, your nervous system is frazzled, your mind is running 100,000 miles an hour. And so you start with some of the tools at the trailhead, which are about slow connection with the earth and creating a space within which your work and wandering can happen. And then Meadow is earth-based meditation, different sensing practices that can regulate your nervous system, that can bring you into slow embodied movement on the land. And then we go into Forest, which is then, once you've regulated your nervous system and slowed down, the work of inner parts work becomes possible, which is what Forest is about. The inner colonized landscape of parts that might be orphaned or that roam the nighttime avenues of your unconscious, those inner parts that are longing for your attention. And those parts in the forest often get in the way of the work of the mountain, which is about, in a really spacious and slow way, then connecting to the earth and connecting to the land through the body and being in embodied conversation with the land. And that kind of work and those kind of tools and those ceremonies, invitations flow naturally into the work of Sky and Cave, which is more transpersonal work, concerned with soul and spirit. And so this training is the center of gravities in these first 4 terrains. But inevitably, because consciousness is porous, we'll also be accessing, work of soul and spirit as well. So there's a developmental pathway encoded into the 5 terrains. It takes us from the beginning, from frazzled, helter-skelter, urgent, urban mindset, through to slow embodiment, inner parts, down into deep conversation with land. And this sequencing I found was really needed for me to cultivate that sense of belonging with country. I couldn't do that if my nervous system was shot, or if there were myriad internal parts clamoring for my attention, for example. So the sequencing makes sense. The other thing that this framework does is it intentionally heals different wounds of separation that we experience that constellate our suffering. So at the trailhead, it's concerned with connecting us to the now. Ceremonies of connection to place, asking permission of the land to be there, ways through the sense windows to feel connected to the land. And that's about healing our severance from the present moment and the possibility of being in the now. The meadow's concerned with the severance from the body. As I said, many of us live from the neck up. And so using slow earth-based meditations and sensing practices, we cultivate a more regulated ventral vagal nervous system, and one which makes possible the next terrain, again, which is the severance from inner parts, these parts that are disavowed, we don't want to touch or unaware of, parts that we can come into relationship with on the land, in partnership with the forest, in ecotherapeutic relational work. And then this feeling of severance and separation from the earth, which is the mountain terrain toolkit, we use a practice called earth-based listening, which often feels like a kind of prayer, actually, when we're deeply embedded in listening in the body, connecting to a boulder or to starlight or to a creek or to the embodied energy of a cave. In the body, we can feel our connection and a living conversation with the earth and with place. And when that occurs in the living field of the body, there's a really deep and palpable sense of belonging to the earth, because we know ourselves as not separate from it. It's alive in us. And then the final terrain, separation from the purpose in the web of life, the soul-centric work, and separated from the divine, which is also in the body. That's the kind of transpersonal ecotherapy, which flows naturally from mountain, but isn't the central remit of this training, but you're going to be touching into it anyway. So this program, somatically imbued, really supports an all of person healing and holding. And when I say all of person, I'm including the earth here as a natural extension of who we are, an inseparable part of who we are. And we get to connect into the rumblings of soul and the kind of the primordial ground of spirit. But of course, we look at the healing of psyche and a reconnecting to the soma, or the body. So that's the framework. Yeah, just looking at the time. So I just want to flow into the logistics and leave some time for questions. But each of those terrains has a lot of tools that you'll be learning. So logistically, it's a journey of 5 months. And we've really sharpened and cut off the fat that the previous journey was longer. And this is a real deep dive now into the essence of the 5 terrains. And there's 2 pathways. If you're called to guide others professionally on the land, then you might join the Ravens cohort. And if you're not called to guide, but want to learn these tools for yourself, then you might join the Echidnas cohort. In both frameworks, you're going to be embodying these tools and doing the practices and walking these invitations on the land. So it's a deeply embodied learning. But the Ravens, there's a few more classes in the Ravens cohort concerned specifically with the art of guiding others on the land. So whereas with the Ravens, there's, I think, 16 classes. Echidnas, there's 12 classes. And you can see the dates that start. The Ravens are on Thursdays, 6 till 8:15, and Echidnas will be on Sunday mornings. I'm just going to flow into the Ravens specifically now, but if you're interested in the personal development work, you can scan the QR code and I'll be offering that directly. And I'll come back to that as well later. You can jump straight onto the School of Awareness as well, which is a personal ecotherapy training page. But what are the charts I'm going to talk to really broadly speak to both cohorts. So the theory component for Ravens, it's 16 classes, and there are around 2 hours 15, 2.5 hour classes spread over 5 months, and lots of course materials. Each week there's assigned readings and invitations to take onto the land. So really taking those practical field tools and living them on the land. This course is really light on reading because it's really emphasizing the lived experience of the tools themselves, and that's worth its weight in gold. There's also lots of time, well, not lots of time, but there's time scheduled in amongst the classes for reflection. So there'll be weeks where there's no class, where you're encouraged to take some of the bigger invitations out onto a day long or a half day or a couple of hours on the land, and to really live those practices. In addition, across the 5 months, I guide you in 3 remote forest therapy walks, essentially, which work really well. So we're all on Zoom on our phones, but we're all in, it could be in a garden, it could be in a wild place, as long as you've got cell reception. And those walks are 2.5 hours long, and you'll get to experience how these tools are put together in a cohesive way. So I'll be guiding you and giving you different flavors for how the tools can be combined and recombined. So those are 3 remotely guided walks. So you're living and feeling the tools for themselves and how I guide them. And then in time, you'll be invited to start guiding your own walks with friends and family. And over the 5 months, I'm going to invite you to lead 4 practice walks. And after you've led each walk, to fill out a template, a form that you can reflect on what went well, where you can improve, any questions you have, and I'll give you feedback on each walk. And there's also 4 live Q&A sessions with the total cohort where people can debrief their walks, and we all learn from each other. So it's a really beautiful, supportive learning environment. And then at the end, it's going to be in February now, so we avoid the mega heat of summer. There's the optional 4-day retreat off-grid in a wild setting. And there's a beautiful property that I lead a lot of programs at called Little River, which itself is profoundly healing, and I have a really beautiful relationship with. And this is an opportunity to gather as a cohort and to walk the talk. So we gather in wild council, we prep meals together, we sit around the fire, and we're in the practicing of these tools together. And there's also lots of time for rest and reflection, and just being on the land in listening. And because it's at the end, it marks this possibility for this threshold crossing from a student to a guide, if you're called to do that. So that's the retreat. And yeah, who might this be for? Well, if it's for you, if you're here, but you might be a therapist or a kind of a life coach. You might be in education, adult or kids. You might be a professional human development guide. And you might be none of those and just interested in reconnecting people with the natural world. And sometimes, as I do often with my therapeutic clients, you might be just wanting to take some tools every now and again and just introduce them to clients and invite them to take this practice onto the land. So you don't have to take all 5 terrains, don't have to run multi-day programs. It can be just picking and choosing tools. And I also do that for my own personal practice. Sometimes I'm really needing something and I just dip in. And as a professional guide, there's so many different ways you can take this out into the world, and you're going to find your own way. And it could be one-on-one sessions with clients, existing clients, coaching clients or students on the land. You might also run nature-based group retreats. You can also do that with this work. Particularly, it could be with particular cohorts. It could be with, cancer patients, or it could be with the elderly, or it could be with certain, disadvantaged populations. You can do power sessions with execs, which bring in more money, of course. You can target different populations with different needs. You could just do it for friends and family, and just taking your mates out, and you just happen to be on a walk and they're powering ahead as they want to do on a hike. And you're like, actually, let's just take 5 minutes and let's just sense our sit bones on the rock here and feel your feet there. And I imagine they're going to be immensely grateful, because so many of my friends, power hike and they're going 100 kilometers an hour and they're bringing the same energy when they're walking on the land as they bring to their corporate jobs. So lots of different ways you can do this. And yeah, ecotherapy is a growing practice. So you're going to be at the vanguard also. This is work you have to take out into the world and you have to grow it. You'll be part of this collective of passionate people who are growing awareness of what ecotherapy is in the first place. It's not that many people are just Googling ecotherapists out there or ecotherapy groups. Part of this work is about growing awareness of. And yes, some people do come in my clinic doors and they're asking for it because they've read an article or they've read a book. But often people don't know they need this work. But when they taste it, they're hooked for life. And this is the medicine of ecotherapy. People might arrive with stress or burnout or anxiety or this just niggling sense of not belonging, or there's something that just doesn't feel right. Or maybe they've tried so many other different paradigms, talk therapy endlessly, and something's not clicking. And so we can offer these practices. And because the land is such a profound mirror, people find themselves on the land and they find the medicine they're needing in that sacred relationship with earth. So this is an exciting time to do this work. And as we said at the beginning, it's an urgent time, showing up for the earth as the earth. One of the founding fathers of the deep ecology movement, John Seed, was asked why he was defending the rainforest from loggers. And he said, I'm not defending the rainforest. I am the rainforest, a part of the rainforest defending itself. So the more we connect with the land, the more we take up arms in defense of ourselves. We're not separate from her. So an invitation to join us in 2 pathways. And yeah, I really hope you'll join us. And as Kate said, if you have any questions at all, feel free to email me or Kate, and you can jump on a call with either of us to chat about questions or anything else. But I'm going to leave space there now for any questions. So I'll stop sharing. And yeah, just open the room. And just taking a time, maybe just to sense the body again. What's here now?
Thanks, Rob. That was amazing, as usual. Did anyone have any questions for Rob or myself, or any comments on how you felt through some of that presentation? I could listen to Rob talk for hours. A very calming voice.
Thanks, Kate.
Yeah, Michael.
Yeah, I've got a few things I'm curious about, but I mean, one that's probably fairly straightforward. I'd just be interested to hear a little bit more about the um, the guided walks that you take us through,
Yeah.
Which we do virtually as a way of obviously training and modeling how we might be guiding. So, is there anything else you could share that might just give us some insight to how that works and what we learn?
Yeah. So the guided walks are sequenced, are kind of evenly spaced. And as we gather us, or as I teach a certain number of tools and practices, there'll be a kind of a guided walk that really incorporates those, and you can see it woven into a kind of seamless arc. So each of the 3 walks cover, they start in the same way with grounding, etc., but then they kind of tend to deviate. And yeah, I'm wondering, there's also probably part of the question here around the remote nature of the walk, which others have also asked. And paradoxically, it works really well. So that's one of the bounties of COVID, that it opened up these kind of telehealth channels. And most of my therapy is online. But bizarrely, it's really rich to guide remotely. And as testament to that, my training with ANFT in the States, the Association of Nature and Forest Therapy, was all online. And so and equally had these kind of guided walks, had these kind of online classes. And then it did culminate also with time on the land in the States. So that's also why the 4 day nature retreat at the end is also actively encouraged. It isn't compulsory, but it's encouraged that we can all gather physically for the first time on the land and start to live and breathe together the practices. Yeah, did that answer your question? Let me know
Yeah, I
if
think
there's.
so. I'm taking from what you're saying. We'll be learning some theory and frameworks and
Yeah,
tools, and then you'll be taking us through kind of three specific kind of processes that we can. I mean, I assume we will be as participants. Is that kind of the idea? And but
yeah.
with yeah,
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 so
good way.
absolutely. So for those 3 walks, you just get to be in the experience and get to be guided.
Mm, mm.
Those are those 3 walks. Then after those three, there's a session online also where you students get to co-guide each other and me. I become a participant, and that's a kind of a landing pad before you go out and start guiding friends and family and those
Uh,
sort of things. So first it's me guiding you, then you guide each other, and then you're guiding mates and friends. So it's a kind of a sequential liberation before you go out into the world. So yeah,
yeah.
Julie,
Thanks, Graham.
thanks for asking that, Michael. Thanks.
I'm sorry, I'm quite unprepared, Rob. I'm just on a mobile, so I didn't get a
All good.
chance to get the QR codes.
Mhm.
And I've just come into this literally, I think yesterday. I just signed up for the webinar. My question is, do you need to be a forest bathing guide?
No, not at all. You can have zero experience whatsoever. You can come as you are.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I would be interested now to go and have a look at what and dates and everything,
Yeah.
because I'm enrolled in SC and an advanced eco psychotherapy course, so the dates may clash, but
Mhm.
and I'm probably more interested in the personal development, but yeah, and I'm on my way out, so I'm really sorry I have to go.
All
But
good.
yeah, I'd like to have a look at the information, but I didn't get the QR codes.
We'll put the talk up online, so it will be on the Metavision website. So the Metavision website is for the Ravens development, and then I'm just going to be offering the personal development thing separately, which is the schoolofawareness.com.au, and there's a page on that there.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah,
I'll try and remember that.
yeah, but the talk, you can just fast forward to the back end of this talk again. But Kate
Oh,
will,
so we'll get a copy of the recording, will we?
yeah, I think Kate, yeah,
Okay.
Kate will put it
I'll
up on
send
the.
that through
Oh,
tomorrow to
website.
everybody.
Oh, great. Okay, thank you so much. Sorry, I missed the start.
No, it's
Thank
fine.
you very much.
Thanks, Kate. Oh, Julie. Yeah.
I'll
Michael.
jump in again.
Yeah.
Assuming there's no one else that's waiting because I've already spoken once.
No, sure.
Okay. Yes, I think you already touched on this around, as you said, we'll be at the vanguard of the ecotherapy
Mhm.
movement. I guess I've sort of been involved in the rewilding community, nature connection sort of communities, lots of different sub-tribes of that over the last few years. But my perception is that ecotherapy and forest bathing is sort of, has been building, but it's still perhaps niche and relatively unknown. I guess if I'm just interested if you could reflect on that as someone who's been working in the field, and tell us a little bit about people that come to you looking for ecotherapy. What are they?
Mhm.
What do they want? What do they need? Is there something they're looking for, as maybe you said before, that they're not getting from other forms of therapy? Um, do people start off with conventional sorts of, because you're doing, I guess more conventional therapy. I mean, I don't know if you call it that, but
Mhm.
and do people end up, augmenting that with ecotherapy? Yeah, so just questions in my mind about the ability to go out into the world and attract people into this, and sustain a client base or find people who are interested. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great question, and I really, yeah, the really short answer is that you're going to be going out there and really generating it. It's not like there's generally not an enormous pool of people who are flocking to your gates, and that's the reality, and that's the, a sad reflection of these times. But the beauty awaiting you is that people really need this work, and part of the trauma writ large, part of our own inward trauma, is reflected in the state of the world today. And it's writ large in kind of epidemics of depression and suicidality and loneliness, and basically people adrift. And so you only have to kind of open the window a little bit to give them one tool or give them a flavor, and it has such a different flavor to normal kind of therapeutic work. And it sounds already like you're tapped into a ready-made community who are in parallel, sort of in a kind of parallel space to this, but not in it. So that's often the way, is just it's word of mouth, and it's via networks. And then it's proactively going out, going to chalets and hotels, going to kind of cancer wards, going to schools, and just talking about it, actually. So, and if you are already in some kind of therapeutic space, it's, there's a doorway right there. You just naturally introduce it. So there's different strands, and we talk about that at the back end of the training as well, different pathways of, building a business. And we do vision statement and who is it you want to kind of target. So we do a bit of a dreaming on that. Thanks for that, Michael. Just conscious of time and just want to allow space for any more questions. And I'm also happy to stay on a bit longer if people need to go. Feel free. Thank you for your presence. But yeah, let me know if there's anything else you'd like to ask. Yeah, thanks, Josie. Cool, so we might leave it there. Yeah, thanks, Jackie.
Yeah, thanks, everybody. Thanks, Rob.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks,
Anyone
everyone.
has any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. Thanks, everyone.
Great. Thank you. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Kate, for hosting.